Hi again, welcome back. This is video number 3 in a 3-part series addressing or talking about the narcissist's sense of entitlement. And it's a characteristic in a series that we're doing on what is a narc. So a narc is like a spoiled brat. We talked about that in the first and second part of this particular sense of entitlement series. And when we're talking about a sense of entitlement, this other characteristic about narcissists, we're talking about basically someone who acts like a spoiled brat. And we went into great detail about that in videos 1 and 2. So in this video, number 3, I'm just going to review real quick and recap, and then I'm going to get into a little bit more information that contains examples, specific example. The narcs feel like they're owed, and their motivation in everything they do is to make sure that others are aware of and know that the narc is owed. So they impress others, they flirt with others, they draw them in, they love bomb. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. Narcissists cannot exist without enablers, and it's true. I've done a video previously about that, and so the whole goal is to try to spread awareness and stop accommodating them, stop excusing them. When narcissists have nothing left to work for, nothing motivates them. So if they are not surrounded by enablers, they can't accomplish what they hope to accomplish. They can't set out to gain what they want to gain, which is validation and supply and attention and ego boosting. You know, if they don't have those enablers around them being flattered by the attention and flattered by the volunteer work and flattered by, compliments and props and getting attention, the narcissist is like a candle without oxygen. It just gets snuffed out, because narcissism cannot exist without enablers. And enablers are those people that ignore, excuse, turn the other cheek, and allow narcissism to continue. Allow narcissists or highly narcissistic people to treat others like crud. And that can't happen. I was an enabler. I was a target for a narcissist. And it's ridiculous. I've been there. I've walked a mile in the enabler's shoes. It's a foolish, guilty thing to do. But again, like I've said before, I had no awareness. So the goal here is to help spread awareness. Let's get people talking about narcissism, talking about their experiences, exposing these jerks for what they are, and calling them on the carpet. It's not okay to treat people like that. It's not okay to abuse and antagonize and pick on and demean and belittle them. Respect, okay? Be decent, okay? So the whole point of reviewing these characteristics that highly narcissistic people have is to compare and contrast. So we can learn all we want to about the narc, but in the absence of comparing how a narc behaves and interacts with people, in the absence of comparing them to non-narcs, it's kind of, we're just doing half the work. So in these videos, in this series about what a narcissist is, what I'm doing is I'm taking the characteristics of a narc and comparing and contrasting them. So in the first couple of videos, we talked heavily about what it means to have a sense of entitlement and how a narcissist displays that sense of entitlement. Now we're going to talk about a non-narc. So a non-narc, in contrast to a spoiled brat narcissist or a narcissist who feels they are owed or they are deserving of something for whatever reason, not because they earned it or because of legitimate reasons. They just feel like they're owed because they got wronged somehow. It's kind of a spoiled brat mentality. That's where that phrase comes from. They're motivated by attention and accolades and props and kudos to their ego and stuff like that. That's what a narc is motivated by. A non-narcissist, on the other hand, is motivated by a variety of things that may overlap or look similar. In a work situation, it might be a raise or a better office or the opportunity to work outdoors or to work with a certain type of people like disabled people or veterans or something like that. A non-narc might be motivated by things like that in like a workplace, or in their personal life they may be motivated to eat better or exercise if they have a condition they're trying to improve on. If they're in a home, they might be motivated to remodel a bathroom because the sink is leaking underneath in the bathroom. There's so many different things that a non-narc could be motivated by that might overlap or look very similar to things that a narc might be motivated by, like the raise or the better office. But here's where the difference happens. A non-narcissist does everything for, or is motivated by, or does things motivated for natural, logical reason that most people can relate to, and not just because they're owed or just because they feel like they were wronged or deserve it, and not just because what others can do for them, right? So they don't develop relationships with people just so that they can later say that person owes me, whereas a narcissistic type of person will just develop relationships in order to get things in return. And you can't always see it. It's not all clear and cut and dry, but you kind of get to watch it maybe over time. And it certainly doesn't happen with everybody. It only happens with the people who actually are influencers and can actually get the narc what they want. A non-narc may be considered similar to a narc just by the fact that sometimes their motivations might seem a little selfish, but the difference is that a non-narc does not use and eventually discard or take advantage of others. Their motivation and their hard work and their goals are never at someone else's expense. They do not step on other people and disregard other people around them or take others down while they're trying to achieve other things. Not one other person. A successful or healthy or non-narcissistic person has the eye on the prize, and they don't pay any attention to what's going on around them. It's that, like that Olympic video that was viral a couple years ago, where two Olympic swimmers were in, I believe, I don't know what the formal name of the race or competition is in the pool, but the loser of the race, there were two swimmers neck and neck, and the picture just showed the two swimmers neck and neck, and the one swimmer in the advanced position, the one that was a little bit ahead, had their eye on the prize, on the finish line, and they were in the middle of doing their butterfly stroke or whatever it was, and they were just looking straight ahead at the other end of the pool. Meanwhile, the swimmer right next to him that was a couple inches behind him had their head turned, and they were looking at the other swimmer, the competition. And the caption said something about, you're not going to be able to win if your eyes are on the competition the entire time. And that's exactly what happened. The other guy lost because he was focused on his competition instead of keeping his eye on the prize. And that was a perfect representation of what I went through, and what a narcissist does, and what my coworker, like, you can tell a narcissist because they will constantly be looking around at everybody else and what everybody else has or doesn't have, or what they need to get involved in because it's cool, or what the crowd is doing, or they're very influenced by what's in and what's happening. And their interests and hobbies change with that, and they don't just keep their eye on the prize and the goal and their dream and just leave it at that. They're constantly assessing everybody else around them and what everybody else has and what everybody else is doing in order to get that one-upsmanship and stay, a step ahead of the competition themselves. Because nobody else can ever be better than the narc. in their mind. And it's up to them to define what better than means, which is what, because their definition of what better than means is very skewed. In stark contrast to a non-narc will generally just keep their eye on the prize, and they'll focus on their goals, and they might hit speed bumps in their personal life, but they generally, work in collaboration. They're willing to discuss matters of disagreement as they come up and seek justice and be willing to be fair and have legitimate, documentable, or fact-based reasons for what they're doing. Whereas mutuality and reason and understanding are completely void in a narc. And a non-narc, they're all priorities. Fairness, reasonableness, justice are always on a non-narc's mind. There's a certain element that it might weigh more heavily in one person's mind than the other person, but like I said, we're not talking about healthy people here when we're talking about non-narcs. We're just talking about people who are not heavily or strongly narcissistic. That's all I mean by non-narc. It doesn't mean you have all the qualities. It just means this is the way you tend to bend, is you're interested in justice. You're interested in fairness. You're interested in getting along in collaboration and ideas and, facts and truth and things like that. So those are a comparison and contrast with non-narcs when it pertains to their narc's sense of entitlement and how different that they can be. When my narc acted up or behaved badly, in the 5 years that we worked together, she raged at me many times. She was stressed and threw temper tantrums and threw things at her desk and stomped through the office and raged at me and multiple times. And she never once came back to me and apologized. Never. That will never happen with an narc. Or ever came back and said, I'm really trying to understand where you're coming from. I'm really trying to understand how we can get along, or why we're struggling to get along, or, why you rub me the wrong way, or why, she never even said, and this is what a narc would say. A narc would say, I don't understand why you make me rage. Like it's my fault that she lost her shit. Actually, there was one time when she almost did say that. She came close to saying that. But I'll get into that story another time because it's a story in of itself. There was one time that she did almost do something like that, but I saw right through it. It was an attempt to love bomb me and reel me back in and try to pull the wool over my eyes, because she never talked to me one-on-one and humbled herself, and she never came back and said, I'm really trying, please tell me what I can do, or please help me understand, or anything like that. Nope. It was all just words. And remember, we talked in the prior video about, or a couple videos ago, about narcs can talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Somehow, my narc, even though she raged at me and never was accountable to me, she was also never held accountable by my boss, the chief operating officer, or her boss, the accounting manager. Somehow, after she'd rage at me, and conveniently were very rare to have witnesses around, she would have a meeting with one of those guys, and she would talk it all out with him, and everything would be fine again. But never once was the victim or target of her rage ever talked to or apologized to or involved in those meetings. So we had a situation where she wronged me and never was expected to be accountable to me for some strange reason. And that's the real problem. It wasn't her. She meant nothing to me, really. It's when I decided or realized, you know what, that's not okay. And she needed to be accountable for her behavior towards me, but she never was held accountable. And by that way, I was disrespected, not by her. I could have cared less about her, but by my boss. Significant letdown by my boss and the accounting manager, who were very weak people. very weak men. And like I said, I've said in previous videos, I really liked my boss, but he had his own issues, and it doesn't come down to respect or disrespect. It comes down to I genuinely care for him as a person, but he did not have the ability. He just did not have the ability to hold people accountable and treat people, he didn't have the ability to truly demonstrate that people needed to be treated with respect in every way and just be responsible and mature and professional and maintain a sense of decency with each other. I mean, to him, it was like she knew that she could walk all over these two guys, and they were the two bosses in the office. And so it was an absolutely super unfortunate arrangement, because had there been anyone else there or in charge, I don't think it would have gotten to that point or been that way. But it was telling, and it was significant to me how she could win them over so quickly and so easily and so smoothly. Even them knowing my character and having the intimacy that we had, I could not believe, this is something that baffled me, I could not believe that she somehow convinced them hook, line, and sinker, and this is how good a narc is. When you are unaware of narcissism, when you are not educated, you fall hook, line, and sinker for their lies and their sob stories time and again. And the person that's left holding the bag is scratching their head going, why? What the heck just happened? Why is this being ignored and let go and overlooked? And it just makes no sense. It's super unfortunate. So here's my other example of a situation that happened where she had a strong sense of entitlement. And this was probably one of the earliest incidents that happened that left me absolutely flummoxed. And it was the first incident that happened where there were witnesses, and it was not directly a temper tantrum towards me. It was a temper tantrum where she threw herself under the bus and was able to climb out from that hole and somehow keep her job, which, I mean, this is how blind I was. I just was like, what? How does that happen? I was there a year. So September of 2015, and I got a raise. And because, and I think I got like a benefit or something. I don't remember what it was. Nothing huge. It was something like maybe a cell phone allowance or something like that, because I used my cell phone for work quite a bit. But she, even though she was in accounts payable, and she just did invoicing and stuff like that, she did some other stuff too, and she had access in our accounting software to the payroll module. And she, around my 1-year review, she looked up my payroll information and saw that I got a raise. And wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Well, I'll tell you this story kind of interspersed. I went to lunch one day, right? I had been there for about a year. I went to lunch. I came back from lunch, and my boss's office doors were closed. He had one on each end of his office, and they were both closed. And my office was right next to his, but the accounting manager was in there with him and her, and I didn't know what they were meeting about. It didn't matter to me. It was my day to go get the mail. So I came back from lunch and packed my stuff up and ran to the post office and got the mail and came back, and everybody was done with their meeting and everybody was at their desks working. And it up to that point, I really didn't have any reason to suspect that the meeting had anything to do with me. So I just went about my work. but it was a Friday. No, it was a Thursday. It was a Thursday. And I was taking Friday and Monday off for a long weekend because my family was going out of town for a nice long weekend. And it was probably about 2:00 in the afternoon. I was taken off early on a Thursday. And I went into my boss's office, the chief operating officer, and I went up to his desk and I said, I'm going to take off early for the weekend. Is there anything you need, or, anything you need me to check on or do before I leave? Because I kind of was thinking that, I would skip out early, but I wanted to check with him and then to check with the accounting manager, make sure we good, because I was going to be gone both on Friday and Monday. And my boss was sitting at his desk, back in his seat, like down low, and he had his head down, and he looked up at me, and then he looked down and he looked up at me again, and then he kind of went like this, and I was like, are you okay? I was standing on the other side of his desk, and he goes, kind of motioning for me to look at his computer screen. So I leaned forward and looked at his computer screen, and my narcissist's profile, employee profile, was up on the screen. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, how, and he was talking in really low tones so she wouldn't overhear it. And mind you, at this point, I had excelled in my job, and I had taken on more HR duties, and had gotten a decent raise, and he had said the phrase something to the effect of, remember how he made some changes this week? And I was like, I played dumb. I was like, no. And he's like, another person in the office got a little bit of something, and because she's been here for a year. And I was like, oh yeah, me, yeah, what's the big deal? Because I was like, literally it should have nothing to do with her, so what's the problem? And he's like, she was just in here really upset because, and she threatened to quit and said that things needed to change by Monday or she was gone and all this other stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, that doesn't surprise me. I've been dealing with that for my entire first year here. I go, that doesn't surprise me one bit. And he said, do you feel like you could take on additional duties? And I said, absolutely. I said, I'll do whatever I got to do. I said, there's no room for that kind of temper tantrum. There's no room. And I said, that's how she's been treating me since I arrived. She's been jealous. She's been digging for my job. She wanted my job, and it's been ridiculous. And finally, in my mind, I was like, thank you. Narcissists will always bury themselves if you maintain an even sense of gray rocking, is what they call. No emotion, no reaction, no care whatsoever for them. They will eventually implode. So I told my boss, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. She's been acting like that. She's been gunning for my job, and she's trying to get rid of me or whatever. And he's like, really? And I said, yeah. And I thought, yes, finally, someone else in the office knows about it now. She is exposing herself. So I was like, yep, I'll do whatever I got to do. If I got to work extra hours, I got to work extra hours. I'll help out. I'll do what I need to do. And he was like, okay, great. We'll talk again next week when you come back. I said, okay. I said, I'm going to go check with the accounting manager, and I'll see you. Have a great weekend. So I went and checked with the accounting manager. When I popped my head in the accounting manager didn't know that I had just talked to the chief operating officer. I went into the accounting manager's office, and he was sitting at his desk, and he was fuming, pursed lips, kind of shaking his head back and forth. When I walked in, I said, are you okay too? I said, I just talked to the COO, and now you don't look too happy. And he was like, he looked out at her and sitting at her desk, and he said, do you think that you're going to be able to handle some additional duties come Monday if she's not here? And I was like, oh my gosh, you too? And he said, yeah, it wasn't good. And I said, well, yes. Don't even worry about it. I'll do what I have to do. Or not come Monday, come Tuesday, or whenever I was going to be back in the office. I said, I'll just do whatever I have to do. This is ridiculous and so childish. And he's like, okay. And I said, is there anything you need from me or need me to take care of before I leave? And he was like, nah, go ahead. Have a good weekend. So then I left. I had a fantastic weekend with my family away. I came in Tuesday morning fully expecting her either to not be there or for there to be some sort of suspension or disciplinary action. I came into work, and it was like a normal day. And she was there, and they were there, and everybody was talking and carrying on like it was a normal day. And I was like, what the heck? after that huge blow up, whatever happened, I was like, why is this okay? Why is this just being let go? Why is this, and I was HR. Like, I had taken on a lot of HR duties, and they had both told me, the COO and accounting manager had both separately told me of this incident where she lost her cookies because I got a raise. And so I was like, what's going on? So I kept working the rest of the day. And at the end of the day, after she had left, I went to my boss, the chief operating officer, and I said, what the heck happened? This seems like to be a 180 from what was left on Thursday before I went on my long weekend. He said, oh yeah, she came back in the next day and said she was sorry for losing her temper and she's fine, and asked for a raise and got it and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that's it? And he's like, yeah, she didn't mean it, yada, yada. And I sat there with my jaw on the floor going, are you serious? And all I could think is, you fell for that? What? What? She threw a fit because I got a raise. Not only was that okay and no disciplinary action was given, and she threatened to quit over it, over me getting a raise. Me. Nothing to do with her. It's not like she got a demotion. It's not like she got anything taken away from her. She's the one who threw the fit because I got a raise, and in return, she got a little bit of something. She got an award for throwing a fit because I got a raise. It was like, that's a narcissist for you. Welcome to my world and my experience. So that's the story of what happened with me, and a very perfect example of how a narcissist acts when someone else gets something or they don't get what they want. They throw a temper tantrum. They have a sense of entitlement. They have a sense that they're owed something for whatever reason, no legitimate, tangible reason that makes sense to the normal world. They have an illogical, nonsensical logic, pseudo-logic is what I call it, about them. And they will throw an absolute hissy fit if they don't get what they want. And enablers allow it to happen with no accountability. And it's destroying people left and right. That huge red flag is something that I was aware of after 1 year of working there, and I continued to work 4 more years there in misery. That is how important it is to me to spread the word about narcissism and how damaging it is and how hurtful it is and how stressful it can be and how anxiety-ridden these relationships are. Educate yourself, get yourself well, take care of you, and stop it in its tracks. Quit letting these people get away with murder. Sense of entitlement. Know it, recognize it. More in our next video in the series on what is a narcissist to come. Hope you guys take care of you and stay well. Thanks for joining me. Good night.